Hi, I just wanted to share some thoughts. So, in our society, you need to work in order to survive. That's pretty normal across societies, I would think. There's always a certain amount of work that needs to be accomplished that you need to get done. You need to have things like food, and you need to live in a somewhat clean place. There's always things that need to be done. You can look at it at a small scale, family, that sort of thing. Everyone pitches in. The less work we have, the more time we have for ourselves. But somehow, if you take that and then put it out to the macro level, so look at the world or look at the country or the state or the city. We go from, everyone pitching in order to minimize the amount of work that needs to be accomplished to finding ways to make more work so that there's enough to do for people to survive. There's a disconnect there, right? I mean, you don't want to create work. You're not trying to keep everybody busy, right? I mean, unless, of course, you're getting 90-something% of the benefit of that work. From the perspective of the individual, it doesn't make sense for us to work as much as we do. Back in the 1970s, it was expected that the work week was going to shrink from the normal 40 hours that the labor movement had managed to something like 20 hours. Because, increases in efficiency meant that there was less work that needed to be accomplished. But around the same time period, we had this shift, this societal shift, a shift towards greed. It was in the mid 70s. I wrote on Medium about this shift. It's worth checking out if you haven't already. I should point out, sorry for the pauses. I'm really just winging this, and sometimes I was blanking on the name of the article, which is American Dream Redefined, if you want to check it out. So we're creating work to put people to work, but we still can't create enough work to cover everyone because we're continuing to increase automation. I mean, take a look at, we had an issue. A lot of people were upset with the cab companies. Cab companies got kind of complacent. It's the sort of thing that happens if you have a system where, in order to drive people around, you need to get a medallion that costs tens of thousands of dollars. So you have drivers that aren't working for themselves. They have to work for these big companies that they really don't want to work for. So we have companies like Uber that come in. So Uber comes in and they basically say, hey, screw that. We're just going to put people to work. We're just going to let anyone with a car drive, which sounds reasonable, except for the fact that they destroyed the profit margin of the cab companies and didn't really pay a fair wage to the Uber drivers in a lot of cases. So they get to keep those profits. And what do they invest those profits in? They invest those profits in self-driving cars so they can remove the people from the process entirely. Now, if we started from the conversation, so we started the conversation talking about, I can't say conversation, but I started talking about how, from the perspective of a family, automating work is a great thing because, the less work you have to do, the more time you have to do other things, the more time you can spend with people, the more time you can spend learning, the more time you can spend helping others so that they are in a good position. I've been doing that a lot myself. I quit my job a little over a year ago at this point in order to find what I wanted to do going forward. I got some business ideas, but that's not what this is about. This is about the idea of whether or not we need to work 40 hours a week for people who have no respect for us and want to get rid of us. Let's follow this automation path to where it inevitably goes. Okay? So let's say this is impossible, but it is the extreme of the path we are heading down. Let's say it would be possible to automate all work. Just everything is automated. There's no need to really do any sort of work. I mean, that's never going to be the case because people like working. People like exploring. People like doing things. People don't like, having a job, but left to themselves, they tend to do something, whether it's create music or whether it's build things. I mean, some people will just dive into worldly stuff, I mean, drugs and sex, it actually gets boring eventually because it's just the same thing over and over again. The thing that really makes people happy is being able to work on something that they're passionate about, which, I got. I quit my job and spent my time trying to find ways to improve the world, and that was far more rewarding, even though nobody is paying me for it yet. And that was only possible because I had money so that I didn't have to work. But I digress there. So let's say we manage to automate all the work away. From the perspective of a family, that'd be great. You don't have to work. From the perspective of the society we currently live in, that means that most people are going to starve and die. So, ultimately the question there is, if all work was automated and all work was completed by machines, who owns the machines? If they're owned by society, which is something that, the open source movement and Creative Commons and a lot of these collaborative organizations and ideologies are working towards, group ownership of the systems, then what we have is time for ourselves, and we can spend it doing whatever it is we really want to. If alternatively the machines are owned by someone, then we are at their mercy. We depend on them, and they can set the rules for us. That's what I see our current fight as being. We've been working on automating away all of the work, and more people are struggling because of it. We outsource work to other countries in the short term, which improves their quality of life at the detriment of the quality of life of American workers who no longer have jobs. So, what is the solution here? Well, the solution is collaboration. This idea that competition rather than collaboration is what drives the world is just not true. Tech companies like Uber would not exist if they weren't built on top of open source technologies that were developed by hobbyists and people paid by companies to do that work because they want, the results of it. They don't want to own that work. They want to build something on top of it. Companies like Uber, who want to build this car sharing service on top of technologies that they don't want to have to start from scratch. Well, here's the thing. The car technology like Uber, it was designed and built by engineers. Maybe it was an idea of some bigwig. Maybe Travis came up with the concept. I don't know. Travis is kind of a douchebag. Travis wanted to own it all. And Lyft comes along, and they're basically doing the same thing. Maybe culturally, the company is better, because I personally have a concern with Travis as someone who, well, I don't want to get into that. I haven't met the guy, but we briefly worked in the same company together, and I have not heard good things about him, which is evident by the fact that, he's Travis. But that's not my point. My point is that we have an industry getting rich, destroying the work of other people for personal profit. Well, I am willing to invest my time and money into building those same types of things, and all I want is to pay my meager living expenses. And what I'm going to build is group owned. And in the meantime, people like Trump are putting in place, are holding in place the existing power structures because it is profitable to them and the people who put them in power. Because as of 2010, with Citizens United, we gave up any pretense that our government was selected by anything other than the rich. Literally 10 years. Keith Olbermann did a great rant on Citizens United when it happened. And look at what happened since then. We have a CEO selected as the president, and he is taking people like him and putting them in his administration to write policies that benefit them personally. This is the revised American dream. This is imperialism. This is colonialism. This is all of the different ways that those with power exploit those without power. That is what we're dealing with today. But here's the thing, is that that's not a left-right issue. That's a top-bottom issue. And the top has control of both parties. Cool. So what do we do? Well, I've got some ideas. I've been writing. But what I'd really love is to hear what you had to think. Let me know. Thanks.